Now in this part, we will cover the multiple containers at the same time. In the last part, we have initialized one image, and using one image, we have created the container. Now it's the actual part where compose is required when we have two or more than two containers running at the same time. So we will take the example of two containers. One is the nginx ready-made image, and second is the Python API. This is the custom image which we will create using the Docker file. Now it's the structure. In the compose multiple demo folder, we have the compose.yml and one folder python.api. Inside this python.api, we have the Docker file requirement.txt main.py. Let's do the practice, then we will get to know. Now create the folder. Now we will make a folder compose multiple demo. Now go inside this folder using the cd command. Inside this, we have to create one folder for the Python API container. In the first step, what we will do, we will create the contents of the Python API folder. What we require the requirement.txt, Docker file, and main file. So we go here. You can see we require three files: Docker file, requirement.txt, main.py inside the Python API folder. Docker file is to create the image. Requirement.txt to execute to install the important packages. Main.py to execute the task. So let's start on it. Open the VS Code. In the VS Code, we have to use the folder. Now open the VS Code. In the VS Code, open this folder. Compose multiple demo. By mistake, I have created this folder inside the basic demo folder. That's not a problem. Inside it, you can create the compose.yml file inside the compose multiple demo, and we will create the content of the compose.yml later on. First, let's create the components of the Python API folder. Here first we have to create the main.py file. In the main.py file, from the fast API, we have to import the fast API. Fast API is the, you can say, function which will help you to initialize the API. Copy this. It will just initialize the API, and in the API it will print this message, hello from the Python API. There are two components remaining for the Python API folder. Another component is the requirement.txt. The requirement.txt mentions the packages with the version which we require to install. If you want detail on the requirement.txt, you can watch my previous lecture where we have discussed this on the details. These are the two packages which we require. Now we have to create the Docker file. In the Docker file, we have the base image at the Python 3.11 slim. Working directly inside the container of the app. We are copying the requirement.txt to the app folder inside the container, and we are running this command. It will pip install all the required libraries packages. Then we will copy the main.py to the app folder. Then we will run the API which is initialized in the main.py. Now to understand this part, you can watch my previous lecture where we have covered this in the details. Name is Docker file. Here when Docker file is created, it has the extension.txt. Remove this extension. Okay. So inside the Python API, inside the Python API we have three files: Docker file to initialize the image and to create the image, main.py to run the API, requirement.txt to install the required packages. Now we have to create the compose.yml file. Look, in the compose.yml file, we have the services. Service is the area where we define the services. First name of the service is the nginx. In the nginx, we are using the image nginx, container name is the demo nginx. Port which it will be exposed is the 8080:80. Now second service is the Python API. Here we will build the image. That's why we have used the command build. Context means in which folder we have the details of the and the files. So Python API inside the Python API. Docker file, name of the Docker file is the Docker file. Then container name, which is the name of the container, which will be initialized with the demo Python API. The port in which port we will export this container. Copy this. Now open the compose.yml. Here we are initializing the two containers at the same time, two services. Now we won't use the compose up directly, we will use the docker compose up build, because here there is one container which will be initializing the image first, build the image first, using that image it will run the container. So we have to use the command compose up build. Now you see we are inside this container and we can see the logs also. Let's do some experimentation. Run this. Now go to the command prompt, you can see the logs. To test the Python API, run this command. This is the API which we have written right now. Now you can see the logs also. We got the 200 data score, means it is a success. Now to get outside this service, we will use the control C. Now we are outside this service. Now we will use the compose down to remove the containers. So compose.yml is the file which will help you to manage the multiple containers at the same time. Right now we have covered two cases. In the first case, in the first set of service and the NX, we have created a container using the already available image and the NX. This second Python API, we have built the image using Docker file, then we have run this image and created a container. And both these services are exported at a different port at the same time using same machine. If you are doing this using manual command, then it can be sometimes confusing. Although that is also easy, but that can be confusing and it can be time consuming also. But here in this part, it is run using the same file. This is quite manageable and it's the best industry practice. Thank you. For any doubt, you can ask me in the comment box.